Turn your microphones on.
Nope.
Okay, there we go. Everybody please rise.
Sure. Father, we thank you tonight for your grace and your mercy. We know that you love us. We love you, Father, as well. You've been gracious and kind. Just have your way tonight as we deal with the issues at hand, or that we would say and do the things that bring glory and honor unto you. Just forgive us where we fall short. Just be with those that might be in harm's way this evening, my Father. Our people that may be in the military, that's serving, maybe even threatened by some of the elements of the world, and that you'd build a hedge about them, Father, that you'd put them in the palm of your hand, keep them safe. Be with our Sheriff's Department, our EMS, all of those that's out there on the front of the battle, Father. Just have your way in their lives. Be with those that are sick and afflicted, and we thank you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you have not already done so, please sign in. We're all present here except for Steve. All right, this is solely for the purpose of the 2025 budget adoption. Council, you have in front of you the figures. Look at them. Antonio, will reiterate a little bit about our need for advertising.
Well, the first thing I wanted to say about the budget is there eventually is going to be a little bit of a reconciliation, because if you remember, we try to get payroll data up to date as close as possible as we can get to the start of the new year, so we have the most accurate numbers. And so last year, there were usually adjustments back and forth between the auditor's office and our review of the wage structure to make sure that the latest figures are used. That's not to say they're going to stay static at the start of the year, because they're constantly moving as employees change. But they're, it's nice to have it somewhat accurate, because you don't want to be short in perf, for instance, and FICA and those kind of things. And so it helps the auditor out tremendously if we update that as close as we get to the 1782 stage in the process. So that being said, as we talked about at our last meeting, a lot of folks that take a look at the Gateway Public Notice, which is this document right here, and the same document that you see in the newspaper or in a filing, is going to notice that the numbers are significantly higher. Now, that doesn't mean that we're raising taxes to those higher amounts. And the thing to remember is that the state of Indiana has a frozen levy. There's a maximum amount that you could raise anyway. So it doesn't matter if these numbers on this advertisement are $10 million or 500,000% increase. We can't raise that money anyway. We're only allowed a certain amount of money. And the reason why we advertise high is because it gives us maximum flexibility in being able to, at that 1782 notice stage, when we're ready to accept or certify the budget, we're able to make sure that the sub-funds within our tax levy have the appropriate amounts of money, whether it's the general fund, reassessment, election, health, EMS, those funds need to have an appropriate amount of cash flow in them. They need to have their expenses paid for, and that advertisement allows us to do some of that adjustment. If you remember, for this year, at the end of last year in this situation, we had too much money going to the general and not enough to EMS.
And we had
So-
a training in, what was it, February with?
Yes, we followed up with the DLGF. We figured out the best way to counteract that. We've implemented that, and we're following through on it. And one of those requirements is that we advertise high, and that's what we've done. And we talked about that extensively at our last meeting. So I would refer folks back to that recording if they want to learn a little bit more about that. So that's one of the number one things that comes out of the advertisement for tonight's adoption. The other thing I want to make sure is very clear is that, you know, there's always a lot of talk about property taxes, especially when the bills come out. Not the most pleasant time of year for a lot of folks, obviously, and it's good money that people are paying. But you got to remember, from a county government standpoint, we get a small portion of the property tax that's raised. So when someone gets a $1,000 bill for property taxes, the county is probably getting $250 of that. So when folks talk about property taxes and raising and lowering, that's not something that we necessarily have control over. We do work on the max levy, we do set budgets here, but we're not specifically saying, well, we're going to raise the rate X or we're going to lower the rate. That's not how that works. The process is very lengthy, there's a lot of multiple steps in it, and there's certain components that have to kind of fit together to make those final rates. And we're not going to ask for more than what we're allowed. We're not adding a bond, we're not doing a bond issue, we're not doing a remonstrance. Our school system isn't doing a special rate request for some programs they want. In this county at the moment, there's no extra that's being requested or being done. So again, back to that advertisement, we're not raising those rates 200%. That's not feasible or possible. But it's
Or would
just a
we
part
want
of the
to?
process. So, nor do we want to either. That's a good point. So anyway, I wanted to make sure those points were clear because there's a lot of misinformation that's been circulating out there. And generally, this meeting is pretty much a formality. It's just one of the smaller steps in a multi-step process to have budgets for next year. So.
And this budget process starts back in June and July. So, I mean, it's something that's not just a 1 or 2 meeting thing. It's a long, drawn-out process with multiple steps. So,
I'll make a motion that we adopt the budget as presented.
I second that.
Well, before you do that, we need to have public comment for a hearing.
Did you open up a?
So,
well, we need to recognize the objection petition here. We want to put that in the minutes that that's recognized. There's been a petition filed. I can read just a portion. On October 15, 2024, Owen County held a public hearing on the year 2025 budget. Petitioner Pamela Rogers gave testimony and filed written objections and remonstrations. At said hearing, other taxpayers made remonstrations and made comment during the hearing following this meeting. Any 10 or more taxpayers might object to a budget, tax rate, or tax levy by filing an objection petition with the proper officers of Owen County not more than 7 days after the hearing. The hearing and meeting concluded after 8 p.m. on October 15, 2024, having concluded after business hours at the county courthouse and the office of this unit. The OP deadline for filing is no later than October 23rd, 2024. So we have this petition. I have been in contact with our council attorney. We've gone back and forth, as well as Anna Colley at DLGF. And so we recognize this petition, and let's see.
Did you open public
We don't have a
Okay.
public hearing, it's just the adoption, so, at this time, we'll take public comment, but it is going to be limited. And then we will go on with our, yes.
I'll make mine real short. I got a business question for the council. We looked at the maintenance department and discussed in the budget of bringing on a part-time employee at $25,000. It was brought up by the council, let's hire the landscaping and the mowing outside. I sent Amy and Anton a quote of $18,000 for 26 weeks worth of work. I also got another quote for $13,000. That averages $15,500 a year for 26 weeks worth of work. For another $10,000, we can get 52 weeks worth of work. And the county taxpayers, as in everyone in this room, already owns lawnmowers, weed eaters, blowers. That makes 0 sense to me. I just want to bring that up.
Okay.
We already own the equipment, and for, again, landscaping and lawn mowing for $15,000 by outside source, to me, it's a bad business decision.
Any other public comment?
I have comments not regarding what Mr. Burton said, but,
We've got 3 minutes.
so you're invoking a 3-minute,
Tonight we are.
okay, because that was not announced beforehand. Then I will quickly, I am one of the taxpayers who filed the petition, and within that petition identified specific and substantial matters that impact the overall budget. I also have asked for clarification and have not yet received it regarding the budget process. So I have a document in front of me tonight from Gateway through the DLGF that identifies that the council, when they have their hearing, they take under advisement the budgets that have been proposed to them, and they make a recommendation to the unit of the county. Their recommendation that's made to the unit of the county is the parties or the unit of the government that is responsible for adopting the budget. And this has not been addressed by the council yet. The hearing was by the council. The budget adoption process is not by the council. The budget adoption process is to be made by the proper officers of Owen County, and that is after the proper officers of Owen County received the recommendations by the council. This has not been addressed, and this becomes an additional matter that will go into record, which is disagreeing with the process, the adoption process that is supposed to be undertaken tonight is being done by council instead of the officers of the county that's actually supposed to adopt the budget. DLGF says that the county can disregard your recommendations. If you make a recommendation, they don't have to go by that. So, can you please answer if you received clarification as to how the council is adopting the budget this evening instead of the proper officers of Owen County?
So for county government, the county fiscal body is the authorized board, if you will, that makes the decision for adoption. And in that case, it is the county council. So I guess you don't understand what the issue is or the question, because that's this board. We would be the officers that are empowered to adopt the budget on behalf of county government. Now, we can't do it on the behalf of the town of Spencer, for instance, that's up to
Right.
the Spencer Town Board. The school board does theirs. But for county government, it would be the county fiscal body, which would be the 7 council members.
Would you like for me to hand you what the LGF sent?
You've shared it, I've read it. I don't know who typed that up. You might reach out to them, maybe there's a mistype. To me, when I read it, it seemed to be more of a catch-all for other units of government. There are situations where certain units have to bring their information to another unit, like a township situation we had with Jennings Township at one of our previous meetings. Sometimes there's a conflict of interest within their unit, and it requires a different board to review and approve it. Sometimes when a library board has a certain extra amount that they're asking for in their budget, they have to go to either the town board or the county council to approve their budget. So I'm wondering if there's just some poor wording there, but that does not match up with the normal accepted process from the DLGF as far as who has the adopting authority.
Do you have an ordinance or resolution to that effect that's a part of the record?
It's the state law that determines that, so I'd refer to that.
Okay. Do you have any response to the petition that was filed?
As I have stated, we have been under advisement with our council attorney and as well as DLGF. So we are taking that under consideration.
And that is the only response from council tonight?
That's the response we will have tonight.
Am I-
If there is something that needs to be rectified, we will address that at a later date. Any other public comment? Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff Marks, Fish Creek Road. Fine on the budget. But I am gonna be a little weird here. And I'm gonna say, are you the fiscal body of Owen County? Can anybody spend a nickel without you appropriating it?
Yeah.
In
Certain funds.
county government, yes.
So the sheriff, the commissioners, the assessor, the EDC, the RDC, whatever the heck they are.
Yeah, 90% of the time, I would
No.
say, yeah.
No, I'm not accepting 90%. Yes or no?
Well, it's not a yes or no answer because the county council does not have
There are certain,
exclusive, there are some legal carve-outs, if you will, that the state of Indiana requires. For instance, the Recorder's Perpetuation Fund has a certain guideline, the sheriff commissary, that kind of thing. So I can't answer yes or no because it's not exclusive.
Can I ask that you not appropriate the funds to pay the assessor as of January 1st and his entire office? Can I ask that you not spend a nickel out of the Economic Development Fund? Let it accumulate, don't spend a nickel. Can I ask that you not spend a nickel out of the Commissioner's QCAP Fund beginning January 1st? Can I ask that you not pay the commissioners beginning January 1st? Can I ask that you not pay yourselves beginning January 1st? Okay? Pass the budget all you want, but there are people in this county who are fed up with the fact that we're not getting anywhere. Okay? And in business, this is called building a burning platform. And I'm asking you to consider saying, we're not going another inch forward until we begin to deal with some of these problems. That's all I got.
any other public comment?
One other, I have, and others have formally requested that the budget not be adopted as it is written. You have awareness of what those errors are that have not yet been addressed, and as of tonight, there's not been any response from council or governing bodies of Owen County to explain the errors in revenue that's impacting the taxpayers. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars that my and others' petition drew attention to the council of. And I do appreciate the quick summary of the alluded percentage increase, and that is not a real amount. But on the other hand, if that's not a real amount, and you did not propose an unknown increase, and you proposed no increase, when our budget goes to DLGF and they go through and do all the magic numbers, that would result in a different outcome than what we have. By not expending all of the monies, then our tax rate does not have to be justified and increased to cover the budget.
It is not increased.
Yeah, we're not increasing
We're not
any
increasing
taxes with this budget.
Absolutely not.
And had this increase not been reflected and a cost savings was shown, there would actually be a balance of tax monies in an account that then could be appropriately directed to reduce other burdens to the taxpayer and to the budget.
I would say that that would never happen, to be honest, because we have far too many obligations in local government and far less resources to meet them. So I don't know of any situation, just being honest in the discussion, where we would have a surplus, if you will, or kind of an extra where we would be in a position to say, hey, great news, we don't need all of this. It'd be great, but I just don't see that as a practical situation considering the state of finances and government in Indiana.
Not unless you want to do without the sheriff's department or the EMS department or a host of other issues that, roads. So, I mean,
You know, we're usually in the budget process earlier on when we're going through our workshops, we always have a lot more asks than we have money to pay for. So we have to make decisions to limit and prioritize some of those requests. And case in point, Commissioner Burton just brought one up that I don't think the council voted on initially because it costs money. Now, you know, there's debate on what options may be out there or what a lesser amount of cost would be, but there's never a, oh, here's a savings where we're actually reducing or cutting something out of the budget. If there's anything, there usually needs to be an add-on or an increase or an addition, and it would make it very tough to not meet those obligations if you were to cut your revenue, if that makes sense.
Yes, sure, it does, but it also, on the budget, such as under CAPCUM, it's required to have an ordinance in place. And
There is an ordinance in place, it just hasn't been updated for some time.
the ordinance that is in place is dated 1994-8. And that ordinance identifies that the CAPCUM fund may only be levied for 3 years, and that the CAPCUM fund is for two purposes. It is for developing fund for the purpose of raising additional revenue for the county for construction, remodeling, and repair of the county courthouse pursuant to 36-914, and equipment of the county jail pursuant to 36-915. CAPCUM had two purposes that were passed by an ordinance. By statute, if this ordinance changes, if the purpose and use of this fund is no longer as it was written, then we do not have a valid ordinance in place that justifies the levy of our TACCUM fund. And by the language of this ordinance that Mr. Burton said we didn't have,
I just said we did have, you just told us the date.
right, you said it was in the basement. This is something that.
I have
this
been,
is-
we've talked, this is one of the issues that we've talked to Anna at DLGF and our council attorney. If that is something that needs to be, she said, she reiterated the fact that most, if not all counties but us they do not have that ordinance. So, I don't know if that's something that's
They go by
antiquated.
state statute.
Right,
correct?
right. So we've been in constant contact with DLGF, and from my understanding, that ordinance is not needed. But if it in fact does, we will rectify that.
But if it's, the fact that it is current, it's active, and it sets parameters that we're required to follow, before we can approve a budget or approve expenditures, these matters need to be rectified, not retroactively like we have been doing 2, 3, 4, 5 years after the fact.
This has been, our budgets have been approved by DLGF, year after year after year. We have been audited. They have not written us up for this. If this was in fact an issue, we would have been written up for it, and we would have been, our budgets would not have been approved.
Respectfully, DLGF does not keep these records. They rely on when there is an adopted budget and it is presented to them, they do not go through and dot the i's and cross the t's. If it is an accountability of council or the commissioners to provide, when they say everything is in order, we have our paperwork, we have the ordinances to support the levies that were listed. That is an accountability that when you send the paperwork into DLGF, you're stating that this is all in order. So they require this to be housekeeping done within.
And that ordinance is what, 36 years old? It could have been rescinded and in the minutes somewhere. Long before everyone in this room.
Actually, in 2020, when the ordinance for Owen County was codified, very specifically, this ordinance was addressed. It is listed in the 2020 codification for Owen County. At the most, it would have extended at that point 3 additional years. And the history of the codification ordinance shows the entire history of the original ordinance, the replacement ordinance, and Mr. Burton, as a signer to the codification, endorsed that this ordinance and the codified ordinances were in effect.
And that money was spent on, as it was, man, I went to the, well, I guarantee you some of that money went to the jail. We've used that money for maintenance of all buildings in this county, no other place. We spent $250,000 on heating and cooling units in here in probably 1920 or in 2020. So that $300,000 budget is spent as it is intended.
And
Jeff?
Yeah, so, again, my personal opinion is that we're too late in this process to stop it, okay?
November 1st is the deadline, and there is a host of problems that we would have if this is not adopted by then.
However, I hope you really hear me. We've got to do something in this county because it's getting more fractious, more, we can only kick the can down the road so long. And I trust you guys, as I said before, okay? But you have more power than you think you do. The power you have is to say, you don't get a nickel. And I'll guarantee you, when we tell the assessor that he's not getting a nickel on January 1st, he'll be motivated. Because, and his staff will be motivated. You have power you don't realize you have. That's all I'm gonna say. And I think you have the opportunity to begin to change the landscape around here by using that power.
I appreciate your comment.
So regardless of how old an ordinance is and all of that, we can't not adopt a budget tonight because we have a statutory deadline. So if we don't, as Councilwoman Chester was alluding to, there'll be a whole host of other issues that come about that would be very costly and detrimental to the services of county government. And I'm not in favor of delaying or messing that up. But I think if there are situations where an ordinance is 30 years old and that seems to be the only copy that's out there, then we just simply need to pass a new ordinance before the start of the year, make sure that that gets filed appropriately and done. And I don't think there'd be any increase or change in the rate. It'd just be a statement. I will say from what I know about CUMCAP development is something that requires the county executive to pass. It's an ordinance that the commissioners actually develop, and they would then have a hearing for that and pass it. I would hope they'd let us know the outcome of that, and we typically do. I will say the DLGF by law is not allowed to certify a county or any local unit's budget if they don't have even a past record of having certain requirements met. And they do ask, they require those things. Now, it might have been because it was done 20 years ago, they may not have a current copy readily available. But the fact that they've approved budgets for Owen County for the last several decades without any particular notice, hey, you have a 30-year-old ordinance, or something expired, or it's you can't change the rate because you didn't do a new ordinance. There's a lot of opportunities for them to say, no, you're not compliant, we can't certify your budget. They also have some non-financial things like the county nepotism policy has to be on file with them in order to pass your budget. There's some obscure things that they connect in. It's a way to put teeth in making sure counties and local units do what they're supposed to. But the fact that they've certified our budget, I mean, we've never had a decertified or a situation where they've not certified it. But if there's any doubt, and if there's anything we can learn from the petition and what you're saying, is that we just need to make sure we update the ordinances.
Did that codification, Anton, Mr. Jim Bryan was here at the time, the county attorney.
Yes.
There was over 400 plus, it hadn't been done in 20 years, I think
Yeah.
it was. So he went through all those to make sure that they were all in order. Did I personally go through every 400 ordinances? I guarantee you I did not. That was at the advice of the council.
He reviewed them.
He reviewed them, he puts that document in front of the commissioners based on his legal authority. So that's how that was dealt with.
Right.
And something else that you mentioned, I have sat through 3 audits with State Board of Accounts, 2 with federal as the executive branch. Polly's been on a couple of them. I know Andy was on before that. Have they ever asked for any of that information? Never. We've never been in violation over any of these topics that Ms. Rogers has brought up.
I would just like to please go on record to acknowledge what Mr. Burton stated, which is he was involved in the codification of the Owen County ordinances, and he did not read all
I
of
didn't say I was involved in it. The county attorney was involved in it.
He is a signer of the document, and he stated that he did not read all of the ordinances that the commissioners signed and passed for this document.
Okay, that's on record. Now, we have a motion on the floor and it's been seconded, but I think it's time to act upon that.
I'll just say that it's important in the notes that we did have the objection filed. Several of the key points were addressed by the advertisement issue because some involved higher amounts than budgeted, and that has to do with the advertisement. There are several key points that Ms. Rogers points out relating to ordinances that are very dated. And if there's anything we need to do here between now and the start of the year, as we've mentioned, we need to make sure that those are updated and we have most current record for reference. But again, as I mentioned, there's just nothing of that nature that's just simply technical that should prevent the council from making sure we meet our statutory deadline for adoption. So it is what it is. We just need to do what we need to do and make sure we check off those boxes and get it done. And we appreciate you calling that to our attention.
I'll call for a vote.
All right. All those in favor? Motion carried.
So that was made by Andy and seconded by
Burl.
Verl. Okay.
Madam Chair, can I say something now that
Yes.
we took a vote? Pam, Jeff, I hear what you're saying, and it isn't falling on deaf ears. I do hear what you're saying. I think the time frame that we're in right now, we understand that if we postpone this, the complications will be far, far greater than we can imagine. But I would say this to both of you. Next year, when we start doing budgets again, please come in and take a part.
Everybody is
and walk
encouraged,
right through-
everybody's encouraged to come.
Yes, we want you to walk right through every person we bring in, every budget we deal with. And I would hope that we would give an opportunity to the public to ask a question. We can't let you take too much time because we're spending 3 days, but we will let you have an input. And I believe that's where you need to start.
We tried, I tried, and I communicated, Mr. Neff has been very good to accept inquiries and to answer questions. He's very quick and responsive to that matter.
Well, next year would be a great opportunity for, and I mean, I hate to say now that, you know, this has got to be done now, but I'll be on the board unless I die next year. I'll be glad to see that you get opportunity to share with us your concern about any budget that we're putting together, how the tax levy is set, and the money, how it is spent, and who's responsible for it. And if you need to talk to the office holders, and they need to give us an explanation of something that you feel that they had spent wrongly, we work for you. I want you to know that. But I know that this has to be done, and I'm sorry, I took it. I've said enough.
You know, and I'm a council member, and every time we do budget workshops, I love it. It's my favorite time of year outside of Christmas and birthday. But the reason, and I say that, you know, a little half joke, half serious, but the point is, the reason why I like it is because it's an open door, and open to every single aspect of county government. It could be the littlest of departments and line items. It could be the biggest of biggest problems and the usual things you hear about, like jails and facilities. And it's a multi-day opportunity for people to hear about this and to ask questions. And that's why I like it. It never gets old. I learn new things every year. I could just imagine what members of the public that don't normally have an eye on it, what they soak in when they come to those type of events. So I think they're very valuable.
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yes, go ahead.
So thank you. I didn't get there this year. I've been there in the past. I'll be there, but I'm going to ask questions like, what have you done for me lately? Because when I did budgets, when I was involved with budgets in much bigger outfits than this one, the budget managers asked the question, well, yeah, we've allocated this much money for you, and we've seen that you've only done this much, and now you're back for more. Why are you back for more? Okay. Why are you back for more? You didn't do what you said you were going to do, and you're back for more. I don't hear that. When I was going to budget meetings, I didn't hear that challenge. What I heard was we can't afford it, which is a different problem. So which is a good, I mean, the first thing is, are you gonna have money? The second thing is, what are you doing with it? And I don't hear that in the budget.
I think a lot of that is done before the budget hearings, because I know the liaisons, we meet with our
Okay.
departments. I met with the health department, I'm the health department liaison, and she had an absolute itemized, this is what it's gonna be, you know, this and this and this and this. So I think that part maybe isn't necessarily where the public hears that, but that does go on.
Okay.
Yeah, and I understand where you're coming from here, Jeff, and I really appreciate it, as you know. But the reality is, as you mentioned in kind of the second part of your comment, that it's a different issue than if we're talking about we can't afford. And unfortunately, that trumps everything, because if you don't have the money, it doesn't matter how good the proposals are and how loud someone asks, that's our first kind of response, because we just can't afford it. And it sounds maybe an easy way out to say, well, we just can't afford it, but gosh golly, how are you going to make it work if you can't put resources towards it? And I think that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not interested or concerned about situations where there may be a waste of money or an inefficiency. And we've had several times in meetings where we have questioned individuals on efficiency-related issues. I've asked those questions. So I don't think that this council would let those things slide. We're always going to ask questions and make sure that things are in place before we make a decision. It's just a lot of the decisions are typically no, because there isn't the resources. So that's the reality. That's the unfortunate reality of it. And I think on this, Nick and
Did they not-
Andy need to mark what their vote was.
Andy just marked mine, it was a yes. I'd like to say, come and hold our feet to the fire. I have no problem. It is your tax dollar, and come and share with us. And there might be something you bring up that we haven't looked at, or that we didn't see, and we will respect you. I would.
Not to interrupt you, sir, but I have a very extensive communication report, email sent to both the commissioners as well as council. Have you ever received I won't say ever, are you receiving copies of the communications that are sent to the council president for the errors, problems in the budgets, the questions? This has been throughout the last
lot of what is emailed is also, several don't necessarily look at their emails.
I got a copy of all that you,
No, that is that is.
are you talking about other items?
Oh, absolutely.
There-
Over the last 1 to 2 years, in preparation for the budget hearings, in preparation to alert you to errors and problems within our systems and our dollars. And I provide this to the council for the council to distribute. I've also filed requests for public records to the council, and
The
they've
auditor,
not been
The auditor
responded
is
to.
the one that
the
is.
auditor is good about getting us all those facts and figures, and anything that Polly needs to pass on, she's good about getting it to us.
Well, sir, so when you state you encourage the public to reach out, I did, and in writing, and it was not and have not been distributed to
Yes, it has.
it, not in its entirety.
Well, I did not do the email, but I have called and discussed this with each one.
But you're not sending, so I just wanted to make that clear.
I'm pretty
It
sure, I
doesn't
mean,
not-
I'm pretty sure you have their emails. I mean, if that's something that you would like for them to have the written copy, then by all means, email them.
I've gotten emails from you and Sheila both.
And just
Jeff?
In conclusion, I know we're getting ready to close this down. There will be a follow-up to this petition. That's the next step. And I already prefaced that, so the council knows what the next step is, as to what has to be done with the LGF and regarding this. You absolutely were correct in adopting a budget. Understand that deadline. But there are other matters that were not addressed. And my testimony was not allowed to be presented during this meeting tonight. I was limited to 3 minutes.
I think we
Your
went over
testimony
the.
was presented.
Yes, it was.
We all had a copy of it.
That is the petition, that is not the testimony. That is a separate, independent,
And it was allowed. It was allowed.
you allowed 3 minutes to speak.
I'm pretty sure you went over 3 minutes. So I did allow your full testimony.
My testimony per written communication, asking the council to respond is to, usually an additional meeting is set just to address the testimony prior to this final adoption of the budget, to allow you to have all the facts. And I did communicate that, I did request that opportunity to meet and to present the testimony. And I did respond to say, I could not respond within that 3 minutes. So again, I appreciate all that you're doing, but it's been years in trying to get some of these matters corrected. And it doesn't fall, the auditor's done an awesome job. People are coming in and cleaning up other people's messes that are still creating this havoc for everyone. And it really is a time that we need to sit down and look at each of the issues and make a decision to do that, how to do that, how to ask that the errors were corrected. The improper TIF money, the over 70 parcels of TIF district money that brings $0 in is a major mistake that is directly taken out of taxpayers' pocketbooks. Those monies should not be going to the redevelopment commission. They're not an increase in a TIF valuation. It is an error that happened when people were trying to correct mistakes from people before them. And they entered wrong valuations to this property. $0 was entered on 60 parcels. That means all 60 parcels, 100% of that increased valuation goes directly to the redevelopment commission. $0 is coming to the tax levy for Washington Township. And the law is very clear as to how that is set. The treasurer's records absolutely support every fact I made. These are potentially Scrivener errors from years back, but no one will allow them to be corrected because it's taking money out of RDC. And these monies should be going to offset the taxpayers' liabilities. It's a substantial amount.
I most encourage you to meet with Dusty, our assessor, and also the RDC president, which is Craig Kaufman. Meet with both of those if you have grievances. And
These meetings have been kept through the state. The state has said, all of these processes, this is the opportunity. The budget approval process is where the public now has the ability to say, hey, here's issues, how are you going to respond? And respectfully, the council did not issue a finding of fact.
Ma'am, the assessor has got to do with the taxes. It's not us.
That is correct in one aspect, but when you are using that to generate and to allocate levy dollars within the budget, and the council knows that those levy dollars are incorrect, false, and there's substantial fiscal matters regarding that, then it is just as much your responsibility to step up, to say, wait a minute, we need a meeting, we need the assessor, we need the auditor, we need RDC to come before us to explain all of these matters. It's kind of
Have you
like-
talked to Dustin and him, asked him about it?
Sir, I've had long meetings with Dusty, with the auditor, RDC, no, but he is familiar with this. I've communicated with him with the details, and this again is a matter that goes back to pre-Sheila. Sheila's done a great job in trying to correct a lot of the errors, but when the council continues to perpetuate these errors by not enacting what they can do to stop this, then,
We don't have no control of the taxes.
sir, you have the ability tonight to do something that you did not do. And that was very specific to this budget. And I've been as transparent as I can to communicate what that process is.
If we did anything wrong, major wrong, DGLF will let us know about it. And we haven't had, I know the last 2 or 3 years, we haven't had any problem with all that.
Okay,
No, no.
that's because
Um,
DOGF, so each year, at the end of the year, there has to be a fiscal statement sent to DOGF, a completion of books. You know, there's requirements of what has to be sent to them.
That's what we're budgeted for.
But when, for instance, like contracts are required, any contract over 50K, with a few exceptions, are required to be filed with the state. That is one aspect of the fiscal matter. So there were no contracts filed for 2023, for 2022. There's one contract that's on the books for 2021.
This has all been discussed with, I mean, right now, we're currently having an audit with State Board of Accounts. Sheila has been in discussion with them. This has all been discussed. I assure you, it is being rectified. So, with Jeff.
So, I think one thing going forward it's important to do is identify the big stuff first. Because when you have lots of big stuff, some medium-sized stuff and some little stuff, and you mesh it all together, you lose track of where you need to focus. So I think it's incumbent upon the public, if we have a comment in this regard, to try to find the big stuff first. That's why when I was speaking, I said assessor, RDC, EDC. Find the big stuff first. Don't try to solve everything at once because you can't. That's my opinion.
Thank you. All right,
Are we ready
we have
to
a-
adjourn?
an adjournment?
Do we have anything else to discuss? I don't want to.
No, this is all specific on our 2025 budget adoption.
Okay, I make a motion, we adjourn.
All right.
I want to thank you, Pam and Jeff, both for coming.